The Society of St. Pius X was just excommunicated, a Brazilian couple was jailed for homeschooling their daughters, and the cardinals were all just in Rome for meetings. All this and more brought to you today by Church Headlines. Hello and welcome to Church Headlines, your regular Catholic news recap. I'm Brother Darius Lawrence, and as you can tell, I'm not here in the studio. I'm with my community right now on vacation, but I hope you can still enjoy the video. Let's dive right in. The Society of St. Pius X has gone through with its ordination of 4 bishops without the Pope's approval, thus committing a formal act of schism. As a result, the Vatican has published a decree of excommunication and clarified what this means for the priests and the laity of the society. Priests who belong to the society are excommunicated, and the sacraments they administer are illicit. In the case of the confessions and marriages they administer, these are not only illicit, they're also invalid. In other words, they're not true sacraments. For the lay faithful, those who formally adhere to the society must also be considered schismatics and excommunicated. What does it mean to formally adhere to the society? The Vatican explains that this entails 2 elements. First, an internal one, which consists in freely and consciously sharing in the substance of the schism, that is, choosing interiorly to follow the SSPX schism over obedience to the Pope. The second element is the putting into practice exteriorly this interior decision, a clear sign of which would be to exclusively participate in the liturgies of the SSPX and not those of the Catholic Church, to which the SSPX no longer belongs. But here's a twist. Right after excommunicating the Society of St. Pius X, the Vatican published a detailed reconciliation process for any SSPX priest or layperson who wants to return to full communion. And I think this is the main point of the Vatican's approach this time around. Pope Leo is trying to be as clear as possible to avoid possible confusion about the SSPX, but he really wants to give a chance to those faithful who appreciate the extraordinary form of the Latin Rite to do so within the Catholic Church, which has many groups like the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, for example, who are dedicated to offering the traditional Latin Mass while still being in full communion with the Pope. In order to return to full communion, priests must sign a profession of faith, accepting the Second Vatican Council and the validity of the Novus Ordo Mass, while still being permitted to remain attached to the older liturgical rite. A Brazilian couple was just sentenced to 50 days in prison just for homeschooling their own daughters. Audato and Yeda Denardi began homeschooling their daughters, Alicia and Lorena, now 15 and 11, back in 2020, after seeing serious deficiencies in the pandemic-era remote learning offered by public schools. A São Paulo judge accused the couple of intellectual negligence and of using their daughters as pawns in an ideological struggle, and sentenced them to 50 days behind bars. This despite the fact that the prosecutor in the case had actually recommended acquitting them. The judge convicted them anyways because the 15-year-old said she found some song lyrics morally questionable, and the family's homeschool curriculum didn't include state-approved content on gender ideology. The family is now appealing the decision, but more and more parents around the world are starting to wonder who gets to decide how your children are raised. Average rent in New York City just hit $3,616 a month, so young professionals are doing something you would never expect. They're moving in with nuns. As reported by the Wall Street Journal, a growing number of newcomers to the city are turning to residences run by religious sisters, initially drawn purely by the price, which ranges between $800 and $1,500 a month. These residences typically welcome people of any faith and don't require residents to be practicing Catholics, but in exchange for the lower rent, residents do have to follow a few house rules, things like curfews, restrictions on male visitors and alcohol, and shared household responsibilities. But surprisingly, many residents say the biggest benefit isn't actually the rent. It's everything that comes with it. Silence, security, routine, a real sense of community. As one online commenter put it, the Catholic Church is finding ways to save the world in every way possible. Jordan just cataloged 34 Christian and biblical sites within its borders, and it plans to promote and revitalize them so that it can become the Holy Land's newest pilgrimage capital. The Jordanian Minister of Tourism and Antiquities and King Abdullah II are behind the project. Sites include Al-Mahtas, the traditional site of the baptism of Jesus on the eastern bank of the Jordan River, Macairus, the Herodian fortress where tradition holds that John the Baptist was imprisoned and beheaded, and Mount Nebo, where Moses is said to have gazed upon the Promised Land before his death. The goal is for Jordan to stop being seen as a mere side stop for travelers heading to Israel and Palestine, and instead become an independent pilgrimage destination in its own right. Pope Leo XIV just wrote a letter to America for its 250th birthday. In it, the Pope praises the American ideals of liberty, equality, and democratic self-government that have shaped the nation for 2.5 centuries. He specifically highlights religious freedom as one of America's most cherished principles, crediting it with allowing the Catholic Church to flourish and contribute to the nation through education, healthcare, and care for the poor. He closes by entrusting the nation to the intercession of the Immaculate Conception, praying that the spirit of 1776 continues to inspire hope and unity as the United States of America moves into the future. Did you know that Andrea Bocelli's mother was told by doctors to abort him? Imagine if she had. Decades later, he's one of the most famous voices in the world, and he says he owes his mother everything. Bocelli recently shared his story with the thousands of attendees of Italy's March for Life in Rome on June 13th. He was born with congenital glaucoma, which severely limited his vision from birth, and his pregnancy was complicated by an appendicitis. So doctors advised his mother to terminate the pregnancy, fearing that the baby would be born with a disability. She refused. In Bocelli's own words, "Life, when welcomed and not feared, multiplies, and the civilizations that have prospered are those that have invested in new generations." For the first time in over a decade, Catholic cardinals from around the world say they finally feel like an actual college again. Here's what changed. Pope Leo XIV's second extraordinary consistory of the year wrapped up on June 29th, and according to multiple cardinals, the biggest takeaway wasn't any single topic discussed. It was the simple fact that the Pope is actually consulting them regularly. One retired cardinal put it bluntly, "I think the best thing about the consistory is that we finally feel like a College of Cardinals again. Many of us didn't know each other, and that seems to have changed." And that wraps up this week's edition of Church Headlines. Thank you for joining us, and God bless.